Good morning, and thank you for being here. My name is Damon Martinez. I'm the acting U.S. Attorney for the District of New Mexico. I'm honored to have my colleagues Joycelyn Samuels, the acting Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, and Jonathan Smith, who is the Chief of the Special Litigation Section of the Civil Rights Division, join me today to make a very important announcement regarding the Department of Justice's civil investigation into the use of force by the Albuquerque Police Department. We are joined by members of our community who represent families who have lost loved ones to officer-involved shootings and organizations that petition the Department of Justice for this investigation in early 2012. We thank them for the invaluable information and support they have provided to the Department of Justice throughout the investigation. And we look forward to working with you as we continue forward. It has been a privilege for the U.S. Attorney's Office to work with the Civil Rights Division over the past 16 months on the Department's civil investigation into whether the Albuquerque Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of violating the Fourth Amendment by using excessive force. We are here today to announce our findings and conclusions and the next steps for the Department of Justice, the city, and the people of Albuquerque. Acting Assistant Attorney General Samuels will address the scope and conclusions of the investigation and discuss our next steps. Before she does, I would like to make a few important points. Today marks a critical milestone in our community and for the Albuquerque Police Department. Understanding how we arrived here is very important, but just as important, how we move forward. The coming days and months will determine the next generation of what policing will look like in our city. We are at a unique time and place where the city can decisively determine the culture of the Albuquerque Police Department and its relationship with the community it serves. We are in a place where the city and the community can collaborate and develop a productive working partnership to rebuild and to maintain the foundation of trust that is essential for effective, productive law enforcement. Although there are difficult and systemic issues to resolve, we embrace these challenges and are very optimistic for the future of the Albuquerque Police Department. Our optimism is based on three important factors. First, although our investigation has found serious constitutional problems that Acting Assistant Attorney General Samuels will discuss, it has also confirmed that the great majority of APD officers are honorable law enforcement professionals who risk their physical safety and well-being for the public good on a daily basis. Their work is not easy, and their duties often are performed under difficult and dangerous circumstances. For most officers, policing is not just a job. It is an honor and a profession. It is about promoting public safety and service to their neighbors and the community. The dangers they face on the job are real, and they must have the tools they need to protect the public and themselves. We are optimistic for the future of the Albuquerque Police Department because so many of its officers are committed to making our neighborhoods safer places to live, to work, and to play, and in compliance with the Constitution and the law. Second, we are also optimistic because the city and the Albuquerque Police Department allowed the investigative team access to every document and person requested during the investigation. Additionally, Mayor Berry and other city officials have expressed a strong desire to address the deficiencies uncovered and have assured us that they are committed to working with us to remedy the problems. We have every reason to believe that we will move forward in a way that honors both the men and women working in the APD and the residents of this great city they serve. Finally, we are optimistic because the people of Albuquerque want and rightfully demand the highest standards for their police force. The residents of Albuquerque want safe neighborhoods, and they want the police to succeed. Clearly, the residents of Albuquerque support the changes needed to fix the problems present in the Albuquerque Police Department. During our investigation, we have heard from many people coming from all walks of life in our city. They came forward because they care about this city and because they care about the police department that serves them. The people of Albuquerque are committed to being part of the critical dialogue necessary to ensure that reforms are in place, to promote constitutional policing, while giving the men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department the support they need to fight crime effectively. These three critical factors give us great optimism that the city, the Albuquerque Police Department, and the community will come together to ensure that the deficiencies identified by the investigation are corrected. I now turn the podium over to the Acting Assistant Attorney General Samuels, who will discuss the results of the investigation.
Well, good morning, and thank you all for joining us today. Thank you, Damon, for your work in Albuquerque and across New Mexico. The U.S. Attorney's Office has been an important partner in our efforts and in enforcing the nation's civil rights laws in this state, and we thank you and your staff for all that you do. I also would like to thank my colleagues from the Civil Rights Division Special Litigation Section who have conducted the investigation along with our U.S. Attorney's partners and have brought us to this release today. We're here this morning to announce the results of our pattern of practice investigation of the Albuquerque Police Department. Our team of attorneys and staff from both the Civil Rights Division and the U.S. Attorney's Office have been working hard to complete a thorough and independent review of the Albuquerque Police Department and its use of force. When we opened this investigation in late 2012, we set out to uncover the facts and to follow them wherever they took us. I am here today to report that we have done just that. Since opening the investigation, the team has conducted an exhaustive review of the Albuquerque Police Department to determine not only whether a pattern or practice of excessive force exists, but also to diagnose the causes and factors contributing to that pattern or practice so that we can move forward toward effective systemic reform. We conducted hundreds of witness interviews, including officers, city officials, and community members who have been affected by officers' use of force. We examined thousands of pages of documents, including incident reports, internal investigations, shooting files, and external oversight and task force reports. We conducted 4 well-attended community meetings across the city to share information about our investigation and to listen to the community's concerns. We conducted numerous ride-alongs with officers in the field and held exit briefings with Albuquerque Police leadership and the city attorney's office. We heard from hundreds of community members through our community email address and our toll-free hotline that we established so that anyone with relevant information could provide it from wherever they were. We engaged expert police consultants to assist in our evaluation. The investigation was not an easy one, but through all of these efforts, we made certain to gather the facts and apply the law to the facts to reach our conclusions. We thank the mayor and the police department for their cooperation throughout our investigation. We have determined that there is reasonable cause to believe that the Albuquerque Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of use of excessive force, including the use of unreasonable deadly force. This conduct violates the Violent Crime Control and Law Enforcement Act of 1994, which is a powerful civil rights law that has allowed us to reform troubled police departments across the country, large and small, including police departments in Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, New Jersey, Los Angeles, and Washington, D.C. Under this law, we also continue to work with other police departments across the country, including Portland, Oregon, Seattle, New Orleans, and Puerto Rico. In brief, we found that the Albuquerque Police Department engages in a pattern or practice of violating residents' Fourth Amendment rights by using excessive force during police encounters. Specifically, we found that officers use deadly force in an unconstitutional manner. Our investigation looked at officer-involved shootings that resulted in fatalities between 2009 and 2012 and found that a majority of them were unreasonable and violated the Fourth Amendment of the United States Constitution. We found that officers used deadly force against people who did not pose an immediate threat of death or serious harm to the officers or to others, and against people who posed a threat only to themselves. In fact, we found that sometimes it was the conduct of the officers themselves that heightened the danger and escalated the need to use force. We found that officers used other types of less lethal force, especially electronic control weapons or tasers, in an unconstitutional manner. Our investigation found a significant number of improper uses of force in our review of over 200 force reports that were generated between 2009 and early 2013. We found that officers routinely fired their tasers, which discharged 50,000 volts of electricity, against people who were passively resisting and non-threatening, or who were unable to comply with orders due to their mental state. Indeed, we found that encounters between police officers and persons with mental illness or in crisis too frequently resulted in a use of force or higher levels of force than were necessary. Our investigation revealed that the causes of these patterns or practices were systemic and resulted from organizational deficiencies. Chief among these deficiencies is the department's failure to implement an objective and rigorous internal accountability system. Improper force incidents were not properly investigated, documented, or addressed with corrective measures. These deficiencies, combined with inconsistent implementation of policies, inadequate training, and a broken civilian oversight process, contributed to the use of excessive force. Our findings are set out in writing in a letter that we provided to Mayor Berry, Chief Eden, and other city officials this morning. The letter is now posted on the Civil Rights Division website, the U.S. Attorney's website, and hard copies have been distributed this morning. I want to pause for a moment just to address two important groups that are most directly affected by our findings. First, to the members of the community who have shown a tremendous interest in our investigation. We thank you for your partnership and your support. With your assistance, we were able to reach hundreds of residents and others who wanted to share their experiences with us. We know that some of you are here today, and I want to share my appreciation for your participation and your leadership in the community. I know that some of you have lost loved ones, and others of you have experienced officers' use of force in deeply personal ways. We thank you for coming forward and sharing your stories. Although we were unable to include every incident of excessive force in our findings letter, the information you provided was invaluable. To all of the individuals who came forward to speak to us, we heard you and we hope to continue working with you to find solutions and a path forward. Together with you, the city, and the police department, we hope to help heal the city at this critical time and help give Albuquerque officers the support and the tools they need to keep the city safe while guaranteeing our most cherished civil rights. To the women and men of the Albuquerque Police Department, we know that your work is difficult and that you face dangers known and unknown when you hit the streets every day to keep this city safe. We recognize that many of you are dedicated public servants and wear your badge with distinction. We don't intend our findings today to mean that you must needlessly risk your lives or your safety. You must come home safely to your family and to your loved ones. When you took your oath as officers, you were empowered to use reasonable force, including deadly force, to protect yourself, your partners, and the public. What our findings do mean is that more needs to be done by the city and by the police department to ensure accountability and to give you the tools, the training, and the guidance that you need to enforce the law vigorously while defending the public's right to be free of excessive force. At the conclusion of our findings letter, you will see a list of recommended remedial measures. The city and the police department have recognized the need for change and have outlined a series of steps that the city will be taking to improve training and accountability. We welcome these initial steps towards systemic reform. In fact, it's notable that just yesterday, through patience and de-escalation, 2 officers took an armed man into custody without violence. He was shooting a gun into the air and threatening suicide. The officers took cover and engaged him and successfully diffused the situation. We met with the mayor and the police chief, among others, last night, and we'll meet with them again this evening to begin a sustained process for reform. We look forward to productive conversations with them on an ongoing basis. Among other things, the city and the police department must develop and implement systems to recruit, hire, guide, train, supervise, and discipline officers when they are given a firearm and armed with other lethal and less lethal weapons to ensure that they don't engage in excessive force. These systems must be developed and implemented to guarantee the rights of all individuals, including individuals who are homeless or who have mental illness or intellectual or developmental disabilities. Some of these individuals are not getting the help they need and can reach points where they pose some risk to themselves or to others. In situations where there is no imminent risk of death or serious injury, officers must be trained and guided to find opportunities to slow down a situation, reassure an individual in distress, and consider options that will resolve the situation safely for both the officer and the public. And that is exactly what happened in the incident yesterday. We need to ensure that all members of the Albuquerque Police Force are trained to engage in the kinds of de-escalation tactics that I'm delighted to report were on display in yesterday's incident. At all times, officers may use reasonable force when they encounter danger, but they do not have an unqualified right to shoot, taser, punch, or use other force against an individual who is not actively resisting or posing a significant threat. Now, as I've mentioned, the investigation that we are announcing the findings of today looked at patterns and practices of the department as a whole we did not investigate whether any specific shooting or other use of force incident violated any criminal civil rights laws. The investigative team has referred some of the individual incidents to the Civil Rights Division's criminal section for review to see if they should be investigated further. And as I think most of you know, the criminal section has announced that it is investigating the James Boyd shooting to determine whether criminal prosecution is warranted. But those incidents are still under review and are separate from today's investigations and from our findings. What we're engaged in today is the beginning of the process of institutional reform. Make no mistake, this is hard work, and it takes all stakeholders working together to ensure its success. We want and need to hear feedback from the community and get your ideas on ways we can work together to address our findings. Some of you have already shared ideas, and we look forward to hearing more. We've also read reports prepared by the Police Oversight Task Force and by others. We'll be meeting with police officers and commanders and representatives of the union, as well as with city officials, to identify solutions that are right for Albuquerque and that can make the police department the effective and accountable entity we all want it to be. In the coming weeks, we will bring the ideas that are generated to develop a blueprint for sustainable reform. We hope that we will be able to enter into an agreement with the city and the Albuquerque Police Department based on that comprehensive blueprint so that we can resolve our findings and ensure accountability going forward. Again, I want to thank the mayor and the chief of police for their cooperation throughout the investigation and for their willingness to engage with us going forward. In closing, we recognize that these findings are being released at a time of serious public concern over recent officer-involved shootings. We commend those who have expressed their views peacefully over the past few weeks. Any needless loss of life is tragic, and we hope that our findings today will focus the conversation on solutions for the Albuquerque Police Department. We also hope that our findings will bring attention to the broader issues regarding access to mental health care that will require stakeholders beyond the Albuquerque Police to get involved. We need to equip officers with the tools and training they need to de-escalate and diffuse encounters with individuals who are in mental health crisis where possible. But we also need to look for other, more long-term solutions. The goal of our civil investigation and our findings today is to ensure that the city has an effective, accountable police department. Constitutional policing is effective policing. It means that the police can simultaneously control crime, safeguard the safety and rights of the community, and earn the trust of the public it is charged with protecting. We will continue to actively engage all stakeholders in the process of developing and implementing a comprehensive set of remedies designed to ensure that Albuquerque's policing services meet this goal. The key part of our task is to ensure that the hard work of the many men and women of the Albuquerque Police Department who serve honorably is not overshadowed by the unlawful behavior of others or by institutional deficiencies that make an already difficult job that much harder. The Department of Justice will remain actively engaged for as long as necessary to ensure sustainable reform and to help restore the community's trust in the police department. We look forward to a continuing partnership to advance the goals that we all share. Thank you, and we're prepared to take questions.
Who do you blame, ma'am? Who do you blame when a police department develops such serious problems?
I think we are more interested in looking forward to a solution than in apportioning blame. What we found is a pattern or practice of systemic deficiencies that have pervaded the Albuquerque Police Department for many years and that need to be addressed.
But how did they wind up here?
Well, I think that, as you will see from our findings letter, we have pinpointed many examples of the kinds of systemic deficiencies that we believe have contributed to the pattern and practice of excessive force. Inadequate oversight, inadequate investigations of incidents of force, inadequate structures for reporting force, inadequate training of officers to ensure that they understand what is permissible and what is not, inadequate tools given to them to be able to de-escalate situations rather than engaging in excessive force at the outset, inadequate oversight by the Civilian Review Board. All of those structures combined have created a situation in which the police department is falling far short of its obligations to the community and constitutional requirements.
What level of DOJ oversight, how much oversight will the DOJ have over APD in the next coming months, years? What's the DOJ's role moving forward?
Well, what we anticipate is that today will begin a process of sustained reform. We hope, and I am encouraged by the mayor's commitment to finding an amicable resolution. We hope that we will be able to enter into a voluntary agreement with the city to resolve the serious issues that we've found. The Department of Justice will monitor any agreement that results. In our agreements, we also often retain the services of an independent monitor to provide expert assistance and level of accountability and reassurance to the community that reforms are being implemented. But we will, for as long as the agreement remains in place, be active partners in ensuring that the goals of the agreement are served and that the police department abides by its requirements.
So at this stage, this is merely recommendations, this isn't a consent decree stage, is it?
That's correct. We have made recommendations in our findings letter about the sorts of reforms that we believe are necessary to address the constitutional deficiencies and assure effective and accountable
So
policing.
what kind of time?
We hope to work
time
with.
frame?
We hope to work with the city going forward. As I mentioned, we met with them last night. We'll be meeting with them again this evening. We are wasting no time in moving forward. This process of institutional reform, as I said, is a difficult one, and we want to be sure we do it right. We want to be sure we consult the community. We want to be sure that we talk with officers and union representatives. That will take time. But at the end of the day, I am hopeful that what we will emerge with is an agreement that will result in systemic change, that will restore the police department to the effective, accountable entity that we all want it to be.
But there's no specific time frame that you're looking at?
You know, we will be here for as long as it takes. I think that this process will take certainly weeks, if not months, but our hope is that along with the changes that the mayor and the police chief have committed to implementing on an immediate basis, we will begin to see results of this effort in the immediate future.
Are there other referrals for criminal proceedings other than the James Boyd case?
We have made other referrals over time, but those are not the subject of our conversation today. Today, we really are focused on our civil investigation and the kind of systemic structural reform that we believe the police department requires.
Pam, can you speak to the local DA's office here, which found a number of these shootings, in fact, all of these shootings justified? What do you say to that office?
You know, we are not looking at the DA's office. We have been working with the police department, and we'll continue working with the police department going forward so that hopefully these incidents will no longer occur.
How long do you think it's going to be before the criminal division of DOJ has their findings and makes an announcement or?
I don't have an estimate. I know that our criminal section, like our special litigation section that conducted this civil investigation, wants to do a thorough job to ensure that it has considered all the facts and applied the law in appropriate ways, so we'll take the time that's necessary to do that.
You were talking about having a monitor. Do you have any idea what this will cost taxpayers? Is it going to be on a local level, or if that's picking up the tab for this, who's paying for this?
And how soon would that monitor be in place, and would that person be housed in APD's building?
So, let me say, I don't have specific cost estimates, and obviously, reform does take resources. But let me make a couple of points about costs. The first is that the reforms that are of the type that we're proposing will result in better, more effective policing and improvements in the safety in the community. As a result, we think that they are cost-effective types of reforms. In addition, as you know, the city has been subject to multi-million-dollar verdicts for its excessive uses of force. And as a result, has had a drain on taxpayer resources that we hope these reforms will alleviate. With regard to timing, as I mentioned to the gentleman over here, we plan to start immediately in our discussions with the city. We do hope that we can reach an amicable agreement with them at the time that such an agreement, if we can reach one, is entered. If that agreement provides for a monitor, that's the point at which a monitor will begin his work.
What have your past investigations taught you about the absolute necessary requirements to fix a department like this one?
We have engaged in a number of investigations, as I mentioned. We also actually have 8 current consent decrees with police departments across the country. Those are all on our website, and you can see the kinds of remedial measures that we have negotiated with those police departments to evaluate what's necessary. Those agreements not only provide for changes to policies and practices, training, oversight, use of monitors, but also metrics to ensure that the police department is in fact abiding by the requirements of the decrees and being held accountable for them. Yes,
The most
ma'am.
important thing, and I agree with you, is the community. And it's the conversation from the bottom up. And that's the community that's affected. So do you, and I agree with you from your experience, that it's going to take years for the institution to change. Do you have any plans to work with the community or staff? Because the majority of the organizations you've been working for the last 18 months are 100% volunteer. So is there a staff that would work with the community to get the community's voice involved? Simply because our experience is that there is no way that the political privilege and those who are affluent are going to engage the community. So how do we engage the community? That's what we understand, especially the community that's affected.
So thank you very much for those comments, and thank you for all of the community input to date. As I mentioned in my remarks, community input is a critical component of the reform
But
effort
it
going
has to have a
forward.
leader.
It does, and I am happy to report that members of our special litigation section who will be working with the community and engaging in negotiations with the city are here today. As you know, we have a meeting with community stakeholders following this precedent. That will start what I anticipate will be an ongoing dialogue
Okay.
to ensure
So-
that we consider the community's
And I'm
views.
concerned, how do you organize that nucleus group?
So we will be having conversations and ensure that the processes that we put in place give us exposure to a range of community views and ensure that we are hearing from all relevant stakeholders.
Ma'am,
Yes.
this city has been told over and over again by its leaders, by its administrators, by its police officials, that there are no systemic problems with APD, that there are no problems at all, in fact, with APD. How do you account for the discrepancy between what we've been told by the administration and what's in your report?
Well, I think our letter speaks for itself. It is the result of a comprehensive and thorough investigation. We stand by our conclusions and believe very strongly that there are the kinds of systemic problems that exist in the department and that need to be remedied. Whatever their past statements might have been, I am happy to report that the mayor has exhibited a willingness to work with us and an interest in engaging in a process to move towards systemic reform. So I am very hopeful that this findings letter will begin a process of putting the city on a better footing and creating the kinds of structural reforms that we need to address the issues in the police department.
When did that shift take place?
Can you address the issue of cultural aggressiveness within the police department? How these reforms are expected to change the culture of shoot first that seems to predominate in our current police department?
So, I mean, as you know, culture is a multifaceted issue. But the reforms that we are proposing and that we hope to augment through our process of community outreach and conversations with stakeholders, officers, union members, and city leadership are going to result in the kinds of structures that will, over time, create a change in the culture. It starts with commitment from the top. But first-line supervisors are also critical to this process. to ensure that they adequately train their officers about alternatives to excessive force, and when excessive force occurs, that they adequately take steps to investigate and correct those incidents so that the message is sent throughout the department that this is no longer an acceptable way to proceed.
You have said that
agreement?
APD uses
You said that
excessive
a lot of
force.
this is dependent on an agreement that you reach between the Department of Justice and the city of Albuquerque. What's the timing for that? How does that get worked out?
Well, I mean,
Nothing happens without the agreement, right?
Yes, I mean, as I mentioned, this is a process. It is not going to result in immediate reform, but it is one that we are committed to for as long as it takes. As I said, we hope that these issues can be resolved by voluntary agreement, and we're encouraged by the mayor's and the police chief's comments in recent days about their willingness to work with us going forward. Of course, yes.
Regrettably, based on past practices and statements, many of us do not have a great deal of confidence or faith in the mayor or the chief. How do you propose to ensure compliance by APD with your proposals?
So, the Department of Justice is on the ground today. The U.S. Attorney's Office has representatives who have been fully involved in this case, and my colleagues from the Special Litigation Section at the Department of Justice are going to be on the ground in Albuquerque, hearing from the community, hearing from other stakeholders, negotiating an agreement if it's possible to do so, and then ensuring that that agreement is implemented and that the department is held accountable for adhering to the reforms of any agreement that we reach.
I just want to hear you
Last
say
question.
I just want to hear you say one more time, because I'm at the community level. And I can picture you having a round table with all the kinds of players that you see will be at the table. So the community is at the table with the players. So how do you see your structure, giving their voice weight and being heard and a part of the plan? Because if we don't get the community, 10 years from now, experience, I can't believe I've lived long enough to see what you're saying that's been said 30 years ago. And that's why I keep saying, it's the community that's affected. So I'm concerned about the community's voice. I'm pretty emotional about that. So, and how they would be included and not be trashed. In the last 3 years, I've seen the community trashed and trying to be involved. So
I hear your passion and I thank you for it, and it is because of that commitment and passion that we were able to conduct the investigation that we did. I assure you that the community will have a voice going forward, and it is one that we will heed, and that will be an important component of the reforms that we institute.
And let me tell you, it took us 4 weeks to get a meeting with the mayor.
Well, as I say, the Department of Justice is here. We will be here in the coming weeks and months to ensure that this process moves forward, and that at the end of the day, we have a police department that protects public safety, that respects constitutionally guaranteed civil rights, and that is accountable for the mission that I know we all want it to serve. So thank you very much for your help, your input. We look forward to working with you going forward.
Do we have a voice in the agreement?
I think, actually, shooting for Let's go this way, yeah.
to say. It's been a long time coming for you, Mike.
Oh, yeah.
Tell me about that.
Well, I've been there from start to finish, you know. We were talking about DOJ having to come in. We gathered all the information that we presented to them. We presented to them with thick little binders full of information from history from the 80s up until 2011, 2012. And, you know, it's frustrating, you know, because they take a while, you know, because we gave it to them and they took a while to decide to investigate. Then when they did, of course, it's taken 500 days for us to get this, you know, decision.
Are you satisfied with the decision?
I got mixed feelings with it. I got mixed feelings.
Okay.
Mixed feelings, I'm sorry. What do you mean by mixed feelings?
Because I was hoping for a full DOJ takeover of APD and a consent decree, and I wanted them to have a federal monitor here. And they're saying they might have one, but we want the federal monitor to have a federal judge behind them, so that if they don't want to do what they're supposed to do, the federal judge can issue, you know, their legal documents to enforce them.
So this still takes a measure of faith on your part.
Oh, yes.
Do you have any more to draw from?
Oh, yes. Yes, as long as there's people involved, as long as everybody's speaking, I mean, we'll always have the faith because we have the power of the people.
What do you think of all this that's led up? I mean, the last 2 weeks has been for the community and this.
Yes. I think that it was finally meant to be. Unfortunately, you know, a person had to die, but because it was all caught on film and it was released. The main thing is there was more of those videos that hadn't been released, and for some reason that video got released immediately, and that's what helped put the icing on the cake, I guess you could say.
And you've heard the Assistant Attorney General say today that some of these shootings were not justified. Hearing that word after so long, what does that mean to you?
That means finally it's maybe some accountability. Because after all these shootings, not once has the mayor or any of the staff said that any of their officers has done wrong. Not the DA has never said that their shootings were unjustified. It was always justified. So this gives me hope of accountability, that something's going to be done and people are going to be under the light and not in the dark hiding, but under the light so they can know that they're being watched and they'll be held accountable for their actions.
If your son could see this day, what would he be doing?
He'd probably say, Dad, you kicked some ass. You helped. And I love you for it.
Do you think this makes his death meaningful?
Meaningful? No. No, because there were so many others. He was just part of the big APD, you know, mass destruction or whatever you want to call it. No, he'll never be replaced. He's always here, but he'll never be replaced. No death, to me, can make that right. I mean, no, I can say it's hard to say anything.
Well, does this help you personally heal? Is this a step forward for you?
No, it's a step forward, but it doesn't help me heal because he's gone, and he was my future. He was my seed. He was my tree, my family tree. Nothing could ever replace that. No action. No, they could throw the whole staff of mayors in jail. That would be all right. It wouldn't ever replace him.
And just remind me one more time, why was his death unjustified?
Because he was unarmed. He was being watched for a half an hour, going in and out. And as soon as the rogue officer, Sean Wallace, showed up, he decided to take over the scene and that my son was doing the same thing he was doing for the past half hour, but when Sean Wallace got there, all of a sudden something was wrong, and when he walked in the doorway, unarmed, he shot him from across the street with a high-powered rifle.
What do you hope Sean Wallace and his boss, Chief, what do you hope they get out of hearing this message today?
I hope Sean Wallace will get indicted for criminal charges. That's what I hope. Hope? They don't care. They could care less. I can tell you that from here. I know. Because I was in a deposition with Sean Wallace. I was looking at my son's killer. He lied. He had no emotions. He could care less. And this chief, this newly appointed chief here, he's got thrown into the boiling pot of water. And he's got some issues on his own from the past, so it's hard to say. That's all I can say. Well, sure, Heidi. Here.
As always.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.